This session is supported by LiquidSpace. LiquidSpace designed, tested and tuned the technology to help companies rethink the way real estate transactions happen, to inspire them to offer their employees greater choice and mobility, to enable happier workers and a healthier planet.
Today we are going to start a discussion panel about independent co-working operators can develop singular strategies to keep developing their offerings in a consolidated market. I'm glad to moderate this panel with Claire Carpenter from Melting Pot in Scotland, Ricki Dorman from LiquidSpace in San Francisco, Manuel from Coworking Space, and Stefan Yazzie I'm from House of Bandits in Vienna. So can you, Stefan, please tell us about yourself and your co-working space?
Absolutely. So my name is Stefan Yazzie Herbert. I'm half Austrian, half Californian. I founded House of Bandits 5 years ago, and it is a hybrid business model. So half of our business model is an advertisement agency and half of it is co-working. So the core idea is that we hire a lot of people, or sorry, not hire, rent out to a lot of people who we work together with. So be this filmmakers, graphic designers, doesn't matter, in order to create bigger projects. That was a business model that worked quite well for a while. The network effects were very beneficial. And when co-working wasn't enough to, because we had a very specific target audience, that worked for a while, but COVID has taken its toll on us, and we recently have now passed on the co-working part of our business to a third party. However, we still keep our office and we still maintain our network. So in many ways, like the structures that were built are still existing. So it's very interesting to find custom solutions in today's market.
Okay, thank you. Manuel, go on, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Manuel from. I'm living in Madrid right now. I found Working Space as one of the first co-working spaces in Spain, really small one, north of Madrid, in 2007, 2008. Then I found a platform, coworkingspain.es. It's a marketplace of co-working space in Spain. And in 2012, I started organizing the Co-working Spain conference that is normally in April, May, in different cities for Spain. And as a small space, I just keep it small. And what I'm working in the co-working wall is I decide to, what I want to do is the marketplace and develop also the conference. So I'm more focused on developing these projects more than the little space.
Thank you, Manu. And Ricki, please, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Ricki Dorman. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at LiquidSpace. We are a US-based company of a marketplace and a SaaS platform for enterprise clients. We were created 11 years ago as an hourly and daily marketplace for meeting rooms, day offices, and co-working bookings. Since then, we've evolved to include monthly to yearly bookings. And then in the past 2 years, we've developed this SaaS platform for enterprise clients to allow their employees to work in a hybrid way while setting parameters around how much access they have to space. We are currently fully launched in the US, Canada, Australia, and we've been slowly moving into the European market. So we are excited to participate in Co-working Europe, and very, very sad that we weren't able to attend in Vienna this year, but hopefully next year.
Thank you, Ricki. And last but not least, Claire, go ahead, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Claire Carpenter. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Melting Pot, which is Scotland's Centre for Social Innovation. It's one of Europe's oldest co-working hubs. It's particularly for people who want to make social change. And over the last 6 years, we created a variety of products, e-products and services under the brand Co-working Accelerator. And that's specifically to help people create independent co-working hubs, but without the cost, the risk, the hassle, or the stress of going alone from home, because I know how hard that was for us. 15 years ago. So the Melting Pot and the Co-working Accelerator are my two hats.
Thank you. Okay, let's go for the first question. Well, right now, as you may know, big players, international operators, new provider profiles coming from other industries are entering the co-working playground. Do you see any advantages, but also disadvantages for you being an active independent co-working operator? Claire, you can start.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be frank, running your own co-working hub, a co-working business is like running a B&B compared to a hotel chain. And you've got to maintain all of the senior costs, your HQ costs, as well as the operational delivery, but you haven't got the volume of capacity and expertise that perhaps a bigger chain or bigger corporate might have. So I think on a plus, customers may prefer to buy from an independent, but on a negative, big corporations who are suddenly going hybrid, they're not interested in looking at lots of independent operators. So we really need individuals, the employees of companies, to want to identify where would they like to work, and who would they prefer to, which types of spaces would they like to work in. But big corporates are likely to be very lazy and just want some platforms that they can book a load of people into different workspaces. And as an operator, do I want to take that type of customer? I've got loads of ideas for like the benefits and the disadvantages, but the market's exploding. We don't know where it's going to land yet. I just encourage individuals to choose the space that is right for them, whatever that is. And hopefully that will be with independent operators, see them as a bespoke or boutique type experience.
Thank you. And Ricki, do you see this growing trend in your platform?
Yeah, I think like what Claire said, that larger companies are looking to their employees to find out where they're looking to work and want to work. And a lot of these employees are going to small towns or beach towns or suburbs, and that cannot be fully addressed by these large chains. So I think independent operators are extremely important in the growth of what people are saying and what people are looking for at this time. So, and the Industriouses and the WeWorks out there aren't going to be able to get into every market that these employees want to work in. So we are very happy to work with independent operators. Part of what LiquidSpace is trying to do is unite these independent operators so that these larger corporations can see that they can book at 100 different operators, not only one big chain.
Okay, and do you see also an increase of other kind of places called the third places, like coffee shops, hotels? Do you think that they are competing with independent co-working operators?
We don't see as much usage of that type of inventory in our marketplace. The co-working operators provide a level of service, a level of consistency that you cannot get at a co-working or at a coffee shop, especially. That if you want a space that you know is going to be quiet, have good internet access, have quiet spaces like phone booths, you're not going to get that at a coffee shop. And something about our platform is that all bookings are real time and on demand. So we look to our co-working partners to integrate with their inventory, make sure that we're working with them directly. Hotels are not traditionally in the model of renting out space by the hour or by the day. So they're not as interested in these individual workers or small meetings. They're more interested in larger events than in this day-to-day type work. So we still think that co-working operators, service office operators are the best inventory for this new boom of employees.
Okay. Manu, it's happening the same in Spain. Do you see that in your platform?
before the becoming of the big players into our market, in one side have become really good for the rest of the small operators, because the communication in press have been really helping the industry here. The disadvantage is that Claire said before, you are fighting like against big chains, right? In a platform like Coworking Space.es, we from the beginning we already been running the platform for 10 years, more than 10 years. In the beginning, it was really small operators that wants to show their space. In 2015, 2017, they became the big operators that manage one account, manage a lot of locations, or a few locations. And now what we're check is there are few operators that are real estate operators that manage spaces for third parties, right? So they upload or they manage accounts in our platform for different companies, right? So this the new user is coming for us, right? So as I said before, like maybe it's I think that in LiquidSpace is normal, but for us it's quite new that they become this new user of our platform, and it's yes, and that's it.
Okay, and Stefan, how do you see that in Vienna? Are there specific strategies and different approach, or well, do you see benefits, advantage, disadvantage with this competitive growing market?
I mean, Vienna's market is pretty small in general. We're always kind of like seen as like the stepchild of Germany, and so when it comes to innovation, you'll usually see that in like the much smaller spaces, to be honest. And so if you take a look at, some of the big players like Regus, they've moved in, they have quite a few offices here in Vienna, but WeWork never has bothered with Vienna so far. And we have like a couple of state-run places. And most of the people that I know who are running smaller co-working spaces generally don't really consider that as direct competition, because they're very different target audiences that they're going after. In these larger offices, you will find larger corporations that are looking for, standardized, high level of service, which is not to say that these smaller co-working spaces don't have a high level of service, but they're much more niche. They're very, very, very geared towards a different look and feel. And I think that these two words, look and feel, are really important when it comes to most people who are looking for a space to work. I've noticed in Vienna that location is usually one of the most important things, but how the place feels seems to be much more important to them than what software stack or how practical things are, as long as it works. It's like the same thing as a music festival. Like the bathrooms and the ticketing just needs to work. But that's not what they're judging their experience by. They're judging their experience by the quality of the music and by the lighting and by in the same way in our spaces, it's often down to that feeling that you're getting across to people, and the way that these larger players are coming into the market really isn't having too much effect on the smaller niche markets. That's much more COVID that's changing that equation right now, where we don't have the large cash resources or capital to be able to survive for long periods without sustained income.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Are you experiencing the same than Stefan in Scotland? So do you think that can independent operators be as ambitious as anyone, locally or internationally? Are you constantly adapt your strategy to your positioning, designing new strategies? Because also demand is changing. Have you noticed this change in Melting Pot?
So some thoughts. Small operators cannot scale unless they get resourced to do so. And the trouble with being a small business, and many operators who run just one space are effectively a small business with large overhead in terms of their premises or staff, is having the capacity to be able to invest to scale up. in the time and effort to be able to scale up. And many small operators might be running, they're just in a particular location, like the melting pots in Edinburgh. We've worked with lots of organizations trying to create spaces in small towns. Now, those operators, they don't want to scale up and create multiple hubs in multiple locations. That wasn't why they went into it. They went into it because they live in a town in rural Scotland and they want that service. They see a business opportunity that nobody else is doing, and they want to provide that for their local community. So I think ambition is different in smaller operators for where they start, and then how they might be able to grow that is a different thing. And the bigger players aren't going to go for the less profitable suburbs or towns. They're just going to leave them alone. So there will be opportunity for what have been smaller operators to start to scale, for those people who are ambitious enough to want to go for it. Town Square is one in the UK that's gone from a rural area in Wales and is trying to scale up in other sort of secondary towns. But yeah, they're going to be few and far between, I think, in reality.
I think it's an interesting point that you're making, Claire, when it comes to like what success is defined as, because I think for what we did like on a commercial level, it's very easy to argue that we failed, but that's not how it feels. For us, it feels very much like we achieved all the goals that we were trying to do, which is to connect people and to create a network for ourselves that we could use. Like on a commercially viable side, I could say, oh yeah, we were able to create network effects with the freelancers that we're working with, but on a much more important, at least personally for me, community level, that we were able to create so many different events and from very, very diverse backgrounds. And I think that measuring like things on a very international level, like when I see these statistics that are put out about co-working across the world, it's a very interesting thing to do, because it's assuming that everybody kind of has the same level of metrics that they're measuring things by. And I think if you go to these especially very independent and niche co-working spaces, of course, money is one thing, but at some point, you've, especially in a very small town or a very small audience, you're going to be quickly saturated. You can't have that. It's like a mattress store. You can't have that many of them in a town. And I think if you ask the question, did you achieve the goals that you were trying to achieve, would be like also a very interesting question to measure success, I think.
Manu, have you seen that Spanish independent co-working operators are carrying out specific strategies to stand by from and to face the big operators?
I think with what Claire said, I mean, maybe it's the what small operators want to do, what these managers want to do. If I'm in the ethical guy's mind, I want to fight with the big players. I'm going to do everything to be a big player, and they did. So this their strategy, right? They become a big player. So, but maybe there's a lot of operators that don't want to be a big player. They just want to keep us simple. So this one thing is okay. I just want to keep it simple. Like me in my space, in a small space, I want to keep it simple. I don't want to fight anyone else. But there's a lot of people that are in the center, in the downtowns, Madrid, Barcelona, Malaga, Sevilla, Valencia, that more Madrid, Barcelona, they have to fight against the big players. So, and there's a lot of people that start changing the strategies. Maybe as Craig in Barcelona, they are independent, but they grow to three places, right? And they change a lot, right? But there's a lot of places or persons, they are not going to change because they are just in their mind. They want to keep the small business and run the small business, and that's it, right? So in that time, there's gonna be players that is coming with a lot of money, with a lot of marketing, and getting all the market, right? So here in Spain, maybe it's 20 chains that maybe have the 60% of the market. So there's a lot of maybe 800 players that have the other 40%. right? So these guys are coming like and getting all the market.
Okay, thank you. Ricki, are you seeing different specific strategies from the operators that are in your platform? You have some examples or what they do?
Yeah, we similarly we're seeing that as the customers or the employees are allowed to choose where they're working, they're going into these smaller markets, and oftentimes we're finding that the co-working spaces that they're going to or the towns they're going to, the co-working spaces are completely full, which means that there is definitely more room for other co-working spaces or larger co-working spaces or expansion in these markets. So we're going to small mountain towns in the US or a small mountain town in Sweden, and they're saying we're completely to capacity. We don't have any more inventory for workers and in this space. What we are trying to promote with these smaller partners is there's other potential revenue streams outside of co-working desks and memberships. And that is day passes and meeting rooms. And that is what employees are asking for. They want to have on-demand space as they need it, and looking to meeting rooms as a potential revenue stream is another way a co-working space can expand, even if they're at capacity. And we also are seeing that similar trend of these smaller chains that are popping up in like a regional chain, 3 or 4 different locations in a specific area or a specific type of area. There is a chain called 25N in the US that has, I think, 5 or 6 locations, all in the suburbs of larger cities. So that was their strategy to go into suburban markets, and then they've replicated that as their model.
Okay.
Ricki,
Yes.
do you like that? I think that's super interesting. Like the insights that you have when it comes to larger trends of like on a societal level. Do you see any are you able to discern when it comes to like? I find it very also interesting to interact with people who I don't have that much to do with. Like burst my own filter bubble. I come from a very creative scene. Lots of people who barely have any money, and by necessity, they kind of flock to these smaller spaces that feel more homey in a lot of ways, and I feel like they get a better service out of it anyways. But have you noticed, like when it comes to these larger corporates that have to find lots of placement for their employees, is there like a trend of people flocking towards larger co-working spaces that are more corporate in nature, or towards like smaller, like, more independent, or is the data very, very unclear?
Still very early stages, and especially for these enterprises that we've been working with over the past 6 months, there's been a lot of starts and stops for their employees. They've said, yeah, all the employees will be back by October. And as you probably are seeing within your co-working spaces, no, employees aren't coming back till January, and then we don't know when they're coming back. But with the very small amount of data we've been receiving, we've been working with Spotify, and they've let their employees be dispersed anywhere in the world. And a lot of them have been going to beach towns or mountain towns or places that they really have always wanted to work in. And now that their employer is allowing them to work remotely, they want to have a place where they can interact with others because they're no longer going into their corporate office. So they want the community of a co-working space, but want to have that local feel because they're in these smaller towns, but also they don't have access to a larger player in a lot of these smaller towns. So I think that as long as they feel like they can go to a space and be productive, get their work done, is what they're looking for. But we don't know if that trend will continue, or it's going to become too complicated and their employer is going to pull them all back to like a central headquarter. But now
it also doesn't seem sustainable. I guess I think like staying at these places also might be expensive. So it might be like more of like a workation than like a more permanent solution.
Yeah, it might be. So we're seeing some of our clients, specifically Spotify, have let their employees go anywhere. Other employers are looking to create small mini hubs in more markets than they had previously. So we don't know yet.
That's really interesting.
Well,
Sorry, Vanessa, for jumping in. I just
no,
was very fascinated.
no. Please be free all time. So all of you. So if you want to say something, so be free. No, but this is a very interesting point because, companies, corporations are working in the hub and spoke model. So that means that they have small offices around where the employers live. So and this it's creating new co-working spaces in suburbs and rural areas. Claire, so do you think so? As a co-working consultant, so are you receiving new projects in more rural areas, suburbs? So before the trend, it was all co-working spaces were located in center towns, and right now it's the opposite because a lot of people can work remote and they want to escape from cities actually. So
I've got a few thoughts as usual. One, although many people like the idea of running away to the countryside, to a mountain town or the beach, to do so takes time and is expensive and might mean uprooting from your community of friends, your family. So although the pandemic so far has created a first flush of people moving to other locations, we've seen that all across the world. I think the ramifications are still going to take time to play out. People don't just up sticks and leave take their children out of school and stuff. And we keep talking here about like the likes of Spotify, these big organizations. The vast majority of people that I know in my friendship and professional network, they do not work in great big corporations. They work in smaller businesses and smaller organizations, and they're happy to be holding on to their job during this rough ride. So again, although most people seem to be working from home a lot more and enjoying the choice now, we're at the stage of the pandemic where people have a choice to work from home, not being told they have to work from home, although that is still, in Scotland at least, that's still ambiguous. We've still got guidance to work from home. These things have not yet played out. And in terms of the market opportunity, if you're a small provider or you're potentially small, relatively small hub in a suburb or a small town, when is it the right time to open up a facility to a market that might not yet be ready to come out of their homes? It takes ages to open up a new co-working hub. Anybody who's done it will know it doesn't happen overnight. And again, if you're an independent person, business owner trying to create a new hub, you've got one shot at money in your bank to try and get that business open and get customers in the door. If you mistime that in this market that we don't know what's going on, then you've wasted your opportunity to create that service for people. So I'm really sad to have seen lots of the smaller spaces that we were working with pre-pandemic who were trying to get open in order to be at the vanguard of smaller rural hubs that could service a future more remote employee opportunity. They haven't survived the last 18 months of the pandemic. They might not have got open before the pandemic. They were in that exploration stage. Or if they did get open, they haven't been able to ride out the wave because they've run out of resource. So who are the people and the organizations that are in a position to be able to take the market opportunity and take a risk on that market opportunity coming out in suburbs and smaller towns? It's complex.
I think it's also true that, like, at least from my observations here in Vienna, that of the smaller hubs, Like we just had the student hotel open, which is, this kind of co-working, co-living hybrid as well. And like they just opened, I think 2 weeks before COVID hit. So like they were extremely hard hit, but they're still able to survive because they have, an international business, behind them that is able to either be able to get a loan, like have access, basically just access to capital, no matter what that is, whether that's cash reserves, whether that's, bank loans from the government, or whatever. But these like access to capital is very, very low. And like the risk that people are able to take as independents is also very low. And the ones who have been able to survive are usually those who don't rely on co-working solely, who are able to like, and it was also in our case, like, it's been 1.5 years that we have been running this despite COVID, despite taking a loss during this time. And that's because we're believing that we're going to be able to make it past this and be able to supplement our business model with our advertisement agency. But long term, it just wasn't tenable. At some point, you have to kind of give up, or like, to realize that that's not going to turn around anytime soon. We just went into our next lockdown here in Austria, for those who don't know. So like, it becomes difficult when things are finally going good. Then, that uncertainty is not something that's independents weather well. And so like, we have the Impact Hub, for example, and they're doing quite well because they don't only rely on co-workings. And I think all of the very, very small places, the only like saving grace is that a lot of them close down because it is private land a lot of times. Like a lot of these very small ones, like they own the building, they're not necessarily renting, and it might be like a family heirloom or so. And they're able to just shut down temporarily and open up again in sometime in the future. But I think when it comes to accessibility, like how much access people would be able to have via a platform like LiquidSpace, it's still not there. Like they will only be able to open up again once they see market opportunity and the and actually seeing the market doing well, not just restrictions loosening, but also seeing a market drive. And that's like the first ones who are going to be opening up again or being very aggressive in that are the ones who have the cash reserves to put into marketing, who are going to be able to do renovations during this time and have more opportunity when they open up again.
And Manu, are you seeing new openings of independent co-working spaces in Spain, both in center but also in countrysides, or what is the average? Let's say that.
The opening of new spaces from the small small operators are not that knowledge for all of us. I mean, it's difficult. All the opens of the small came to our ears, right? We see a lot of new openings of the chains of the Rodopico, Satico, these guys, and they are opening right now. There are another operators in second cities like Valencia. Yeah, new openings over there, quite big and new players, but not big, not small players. I mean, they're coming into the market, new players with a group in the background, so they are going to have money to grow up. New openings of like Monday in Malaga, it's second cities. And of course, there's a new opens from the small operators, but they have not that sounding press or in the media, right? But of course, they are opening new ones.
Okay. And Stefan, are you thinking in expanding your business? Because the next question is how to fund the growth or stand alone. So what do you think?
We just handed over the co-working contract, so I guess not. But I don't know. Maybe I can answer that question a different way. We were actually having plans during this time to expand our studio. We focus on creatives and more specifically like film production creatives. I mean, not always, but that's kind of the focus a little bit. And so we have 2 studios in house that we rent out. And so one of our plans was to generate quite a bit of investment in order to put into a permanent live streaming setup, because this is something that a lot of companies need, and it's also something that can be funded by our own advertisement agency. So like, you know, by being able to sell content via webinars or whatever, we would have, are currently in the process of generating funds in order to invest into the space. Now, it's a little bit more difficult because it's not necessarily our space right now. So we have to also like figure out with the new people who are taking over, what that relationship is going to look like. But we have typically always used our other business model in order to drive growth. So like we've always found ways to be like, okay, well, what do we need right now? Okay, we need speakers for like, because we want to party more, then let's like, you know, make sure that we do some shoot where we require speakers and then throw that into the props list and then like, you know, build that halfway on. So we've either relied on government stimulus. So like, you know, what's the English word for Förderung? Government grants for specific things. Like there was a shared facilities government grant that we accepted. There was, you know, different tax deferrals that happened during COVID that was able to drive at least a certain amount of growth when it came to changing our services to be fixed more on remote. Like we needed to install VPNs for everybody because like a large portion of the services that we offer are IT in nature. So we have like a shared server that everybody can edit on, for example, and we needed to provide remote access to people during COVID. So we've always tried to use the speciality of our services in order to drive any kind of growth. But when it comes to investing into infrastructure, there's not really an incentive to do so for us as a smaller space, and there's no necessity either. I think it's more about the depth of our services rather than the breadth.
Okay, great. So we are running out of time, but we are going to answer quickly. Well, if any of you have some thoughts on that topic, and then we will have the last question, okay, from one participant. So, any thought about what Stefan said? You want to add something to that question?
I'm just going to say that we have grown during COVID. We see the opportunity for co-working. Like the last 18 months has been a massive advert for the co-working industry, and not just about flexi space, but people saying actually what they want is community. They can go to a coffee shop or they can work from home. They now have choice, which they didn't have. So what's going to entice them into one flexi space as opposed to another? It's going to be the type of relationships and the feeling. Come back to your point, Stefan, you know, the feeling that they get when they go into a space, and the services that they get there are what's going to attract them. And so we grew our co-working operations during this last year, and people love our new space in Edinburgh, and you're welcome anytime. Welcome anytime. When you can travel.
Awesome.
Right, no. Congratulations, good. Okay.
That's a really, I was going to say, I think that's a really good point, Claire. I've been working at LiquidSpace for 7 years, and I have access to anywhere in our network of spaces. I typically go to the same space because I feel comfortable there. I know where the things that I need are, and I just want to work and get down to business. So I don't really necessarily need a whole network of space. I just need the right space for me to work. And once you find that space, you're going to continue to go back.
That's a very important customer journey experience for us operators to remember, because it's how to get you in the door and give you a good time the first time so that you come back again and again and again. Because it's like a restaurant. When you find a good restaurant, you don't actually go and try too many others. So we've got to get in there fast and get the people first time round.
That's clear. Yeah. Manu, you want to say something?
I'm like, and no, thanks for the invitation. And yes, as Ricki said, there's a lot of time that you can offer to a big company, a lot of spaces, but finally the individuals are going to use the same spaces anytime, right? Every time I'm comfortable in this place, so I'm going to keep going to the same place, right? If so, that's going to be definitely what going to happen, right? Like big companies are going to offer hybrid space for the employees, but each employee is going to repeat the space, I think, most of the time, right?
I agree. Okay, so let's go for the last question. The question is made by Christoph Fall. And well, I'm going to read it. I think an interesting question is how can small operators develop economies of scale and network effects equal to big brands by working together, and why should they do it? Is it access to data, technology, shared resources, funding, something else? Interesting question.
Do you need to? I think like this idea of like beating brands is maybe the wrong framing of the question. I think like when it comes to economies of scale, independent co-working spaces may not, like we kind of already addressed this a little bit earlier in the beginning, that may not be the definition of success. But if it is, I think, I mean, I don't know that much about LiquidSpace, but this seems to be a very good solution to be able to connect different spaces in order to have those kinds of network effects. Because I think that for many, like, you know, as Claire said before, for the small person who is doing a rural co-working space, the goal is not to start 200 rural co-working spaces, maybe, but rarely I think is this the case. But if you want to benefit from the network effects that you know, economies of scale have, it would be more about finding what these kind of things, these kind of spaces have in common, what these kinds of customers have in common, what these kind of operators have in common, and then find the lowest common denominator, and then connect those people together in order to benefit from each other. And I think that goal of trying to set a base level of connection is stronger. You know, empathy is for me stronger than competition, than setting a goal to beat a brand.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stefan. Yeah, anyone else want to say something?
Yeah, I think that I think creating that network, whether it is through an aggregator like LiquidSpace or creating a network with other independent operators. There's a network in the US called Lexi, League of Extraordinary Co-working, where they've created this mini network within of these operators that they've deemed as extraordinary co-working spaces. And they provide reciprocal benefits to their members that if they travel to any of these other locations, they get access to the other member spaces. And what we've seen is that people don't often travel and use those spaces, but they like that idea that if they are traveling to another area, that they have this broader network. So I think that's an excellent selling point, even if people don't ultimately use it. Just saying, you have access to a space in Vienna and Edinburgh and Malaga, Spain, and just saying I have a connection to another space in another location. And then as LiquidSpace, we are trying to create this broader network and connect these enterprises across hundreds and thousands of co-working spaces.
Okay.
I think that now that more and more spaces are doing passes, desk for a day type passes, if I want to go to Vienna or Berlin or London, I'll just buy one of those as a customer. I don't need to be part, and Google allows me to search, or you know, any platform will allow me to search for different spaces to go to. I think where there's a market opportunity for co-working hubs as businesses to save costs for them is to share maybe some of the, now that we're moving things online rather than in person, but some of the learning events that we may put on for our members that could be delivered digitally and shared amongst other co-working hubs. So perhaps you have a network of 20 hubs that between them put on one event a month, and that each place's members could go to those events. That would save me time and money in my business and allow my team to only have to put on one event for our client base and not many. That we've had people for years say, oh, you know, can you be part of a network and your members could come and use my space? And I'm like, but they're not going to. They're just, 99% of the time they're not going to any other space. So that's not the driver for me as a hub owner. So I think it's actually not about what is going to benefit members very much, but what it would benefit hub owners, and how could we reduce our costs as independent spaces and aggregate some of those costs? Do we share a marketing expert across a dozen spaces, for instance, who markets on behalf of all of us rather than one of us? You know, there's ways like that. That would interest me. If anybody wants to do that, come talk.
Dope input, Claire. I love that answer. I think generally, like on a systemic level, you just have to ask yourselves, like with network effects, it's always about economies of with economies of scale, it's always about reaching a certain level of homogeneity. You know, you need to have a homogeneous platform, a homogeneous whatever member base, and per definition, independent co-working spaces are independent, you know, and whether they are boutique or diverse, you know, they tend to pride themselves in these kinds of things. So I think questioning like yourself as in a world that is defined by diversity, what should we agree upon to be homogeneous? Is that, you know, the booking portal? Is that the pricing model? I think that's, you know, Claire's idea to then also we take a look at what kind of costs can be saved on a co-working owner perspective is super interesting.
It's interesting, right? Like there's also maybe a lot of users of co-working spaces. They don't want to be part of any community. They just want to use it, right? And there's a lot of workers that come from the company. They just want to use the space. They want to be part of the community. They have their own community that is the company, right? Maybe we are investing, we are developing platforms to get these users, right? Okay, I'm going to space just for 1 day or for 3 days or day pass or meeting room, but that's the end. It's like using a hotel, right? I'm going to use that hotel. I'm not going to be part of a community, a hotel. Just want to use it. So. And there's a lot of platforms that we are developing that just the day pass, a person that just want to visit a space for 1 day or 5 days or 1 month, and that's the end. I'm going to my home and with my own community. So there's a lot of users of co-working spaces that didn't want to be part of any community, but this is the business. Like, hey, we want you to use as a space as to get some revenue. So I think there is an interesting point that there's not many person wants to be part of a community, but a lot of person want to use co-working spaces.
Right. Okay. So thank you, all of you. It's been a very insightful conversation. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to ask you to all of you that please say in one word your takeaway of this discussion, having in mind that the goal was to figure out how independent operators are addressing the maturation of the market. In a word.
That's really difficult, Vanessa.
Yeah. Well, to me, I'm gonna be the first one and to add value, provide value to the community, have a strong value proposition.
Yeah, I'd say stay niche. It's okay. Stay small, stay niche.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think Claire's right as well. Stay niche or stay in suburban markets. Some smaller markets need space, and that large operators aren't going to go there. And we need space. People are looking for space.
But promote your space through platforms.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Promotion. Okay, the word would be promotion or promote.
Stefan, please. We don't hear you.
Yes.
Have okay. Yes.
Okay, my phone. I would say depth, not breadth.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
This session is supported by LiquidSpace. LiquidSpace designed, tested and tuned the technology to help companies rethink the way real estate transactions happen, to inspire them to offer their employees greater choice and mobility, to enable happier workers and a healthier planet.